What if the fears, distractions, and chaotic thoughts you experience daily aren't entirely your own? What if something unseen has been influencing humanity from the shadows for thousands of years? In ancient Gnostic texts, we find mention of mysterious entities called Archons, a word that means rulers in Greek. But in this context, they are much more than political figures. They are described as cosmic parasites, born from a distortion in the fabric of the universe itself, whose sole purpose is to keep human consciousness trapped in illusion, fear, and forgetfulness. These beings don't need physical bodies. They operate in the mental and astral realms, subtly whispering into the minds of humanity, feeding off negative energy and enforcing a spiritual system of control. Today, many spiritual seekers unknowingly battle the very forces described in these ancient texts, forces that manipulate thoughts, distort perception, and keep people locked in loops of suffering and distraction. If you've ever felt like something is deliberately pulling you away from your spiritual path, you're not alone. Understanding the Archons isn't just some esoteric exercise. It's essential for reclaiming your inner sovereignty and seeing through the veil of illusion that surrounds our reality. In this video, we'll uncover the full story of the Archons, their origins, how they manipulate the world, and, most importantly, how you can recognize and overcome their influence. Because only when you know what you're up against can you begin to truly awaken. To understand the Archons, we must journey back to a time before time, a mythic age not of Earth, but of the cosmic mind itself. In the mystical cosmology of the Gnostics, the universe began not with a bang, but with a divine dream. Emanations of light from the source, or what they called the true God, also known as the monad, flowed forth. From this infinite source came countless divine beings called Aeons, who dwelt in harmony within the pleroma, the fullness, the realm of pure spirit. Among these was Sophia, the embodiment of wisdom. But Sophia made a grave mistake. In a burst of passion and curiosity, she attempted to create without her divine counterpart, an act that fractured the cosmic balance. The result of this solitary act was the birth of a malformed being, Yaldabaoth, the first Archon. He was a blind, arrogant entity, unaware of the greater realms above him, thinking himself a god. Yaldabaoth proclaimed, "I am God, and there is no other beside me," echoing verses later found in mainstream religious texts. But this was not the voice of the true source. It was the delusion of a being cut off from light. Yaldabaoth then created his own realm, a false material universe, a dim reflection of the divine pleroma. And from his essence, he spawned the Archons, a host of subordinate rulers designed to maintain control over this counterfeit world. These Archons were not creators in the true sense. They were imitators, counterfeits of the divine order. Lacking the spark of spirit, they could not create souls, only mechanical, soulless patterns, systems, dogmas, and power structures. Their goal was to trap the divine spark within human beings, keeping it bound to the material realm through fear, distraction, and illusion. In the Gnostic view, Earth itself was crafted as a spiritual prison, not by the true God, but by Yaldabaoth and his archonic agents. This perspective challenges almost every conventional religious narrative. It suggests that the God worshipped by institutions throughout history may in fact be a false God, a shadow of the original source, and it paints a very different picture of human purpose, not to obey this world, but to transcend it, to awaken and return to the light. The Archons have no power over those who remember who they truly are, but for the vast majority of humanity, who live unaware of this cosmic drama, the Archons operate in silence, controlling from behind the curtain. Knowing where they come from is the first step to unraveling their influence and reclaiming the sovereignty that has always been yours. In the grand architecture of the cosmos, everything has its place, or so it seems. But within the Gnostic cosmology, the Archons represent a distortion within that hierarchy. Unlike the divine Aeons who dwell in the pleroma and radiate harmony, the Archons exist in a liminal zone, a kind of metaphysical middle ground between pure spirit and dense matter. They operate in the psycho-spiritual planes, close enough to influence human consciousness, yet far enough from the light to remain in darkness themselves. Created by Yaldabaoth, the false god who ignorantly believed himself to be the only deity, the Archons were born not out of wisdom, but error and arrogance. Their existence is parasitic. They do not create, they control. Within the Gnostic mythos, Yaldabaoth declared himself ruler over the material cosmos. He appointed the Archons as his administrators, each given dominion over planets, elements, and even aspects of human experience. They became the governors of fate, time, and structure, the architects of a simulated reality that mimics divine order while lacking its essence. This is why Gnostics often referred to our world as a prison planet, not because nature itself is evil, but because the invisible infrastructure behind it has been manipulated to suppress true awareness. The Archons are not demons in the traditional religious sense. They are cosmic bureaucrats enforcing the illusion of separation. Their role is to maintain the veil of forgetfulness that clouds human perception. Through distraction, division, and distortion, they keep the soul asleep, trapped in cycles of birth, suffering, and spiritual amnesia. According to Gnostic writings, they feed off fear, pain, and confusion, which are abundant in a world ruled by lies. Their power is not direct violence, but influence, implanting false narratives, sustaining systems of control, and corrupting the flow of divine intuition. You can see echoes of archonic influence in dogmatic religion, where rigid obedience is valued over inner knowing. You see it in corrupt institutions where hierarchy replaces empathy. And you see it in modern life where time scarcity, material obsession, and digital overload keep us distracted from the stillness within. These are not just cultural developments. They may be the evolution of an ancient strategy refined to keep consciousness fragmented and docile. Yet, even as they pose as rulers, the Archons fear one thing above all: the awakening of Gnosis, direct inner knowing of the divine, beyond their reach. They fear the individual who reclaims their sovereignty and pierces through illusion. Because when you remember your origin in the pleroma, when you see the matrix for what it is, the Archons lose their grip. Their power is real, but it is entirely dependent on ignorance. The moment we stop consenting to their influence is the moment their false hierarchy begins to crumble. If the Archons are real, then how do they actually affect us? Unlike mythological demons that storm the gates with fire and fury, the Archons are far more insidious. Their power lies not in overt destruction, but in subtle manipulation, in the planting of thoughts, in the distortion of perception, and in the quiet erosion of your inner truth. Their goal is not to destroy humanity, but to enslave it from within, turning sovereign souls into obedient, disconnected beings who forget their origin and doubt their power. The Gnostics taught that Archons infiltrate the mind, not the body. They exploit the gap between thought and awareness. You may hear them as the voice of self-doubt, the irrational fear before a leap of faith, or the sudden wave of shame that paralyzes you into inaction. These are not random emotional surges. They are engineered responses designed to lower your vibration and keep you tethered to fear, guilt, and confusion. The Archons don't create new thoughts. They recycle familiar wounds, magnifying past traumas and reinforcing limiting beliefs. Over time, this shapes your inner reality, and by extension, your outer one. But their influence extends far beyond the individual mind. The Archons operate through systems and structures. Religions that demand obedience rather than awakening. Governments that trade freedom for false security. Education that discourages questioning. And media that floods consciousness with fear, distraction, and division. These mechanisms aren't always consciously malicious, but they reflect an archonic blueprint. Hierarchy over harmony, control over creativity, fear over love. Even modern technologies, while neutral by design, have become tools for disconnection, pulling people away from introspection and into the noise of algorithmic conditioning. One of the most dangerous tactics of the Archons is their ability to mimic the voice of the divine. This is the false light phenomenon, where a seeker believes they've encountered a higher power, but in truth, they've been ensnared by an archonic projection. These beings know how to speak in spiritual tones, how to wear the mask of angels, and how to present illusion as insight. This is why Gnosticism warned against external worship and emphasized inner gnosis, because the only true guidance comes from within, not from visions or voices that may be laced with deception. And yet, despite their deep infiltration, the Archons are not all-powerful. Their influence is entirely dependent on our unconscious agreement. The more aware you become, the more their grip weakens. When you observe your thoughts without identification, when you question inherited systems, when you choose stillness over stimulation, you disrupt the patterns they rely on. Awareness is the beginning of freedom, and this is precisely why the Archons fear human awakening more than anything else. Because when enough people begin to see through the illusion, their ancient machinery of control starts to unravel. The Archons influence humanity by sowing inner chaos and outer order. Just enough comfort to keep you from rising. Just enough fear to keep you from questioning. But once you see the pattern, once you realize the voice of doubt is not your own, you begin to reclaim something they cannot touch: your inner sovereignty, your light, and your right to remember who you truly are. Many people today sense that something is deeply wrong with the world, that reality feels artificial, manipulated, even scripted. This intuition isn't new. Long before the term Matrix became popularized by Hollywood, ancient Gnostic texts spoke of a false reality constructed by the Archons, a kind of spiritual simulation designed to enslave human consciousness. What we perceive as the material world is, in this view, not the true reality, but a mirror world, a carefully engineered illusion designed to keep souls asleep. The Archons are the architects of this matrix. But unlike machines in a dystopian film, their tools are subtle yet powerful. Belief systems, language, thought loops, social conditioning, and energetic manipulation. Their aim is to disconnect you from the divine spark within, replacing authentic spiritual experience with artificial frameworks. Religion as ritual without soul. Education as memorization without wisdom. Work as survival without meaning. They create just enough comfort and convenience to keep people from questioning, while flooding the senses with distraction to suppress critical thought. Every layer of the matrix, from government to entertainment to economy, serves the same purpose: to anchor your awareness in the outer world and keep your inner truth buried beneath noise. In this system, time becomes a prison. The Archons use it as a tool of control, trapping souls in linear thinking and cycles of urgency, regret, and anticipation. The constant rush of not enough time pulls us away from the eternal now, where truth actually resides. Similarly, the idea of identity is weaponized. You are taught to define yourself by your race, nationality, gender, occupation, fragmenting the self into labels. The more divided you are, the easier you are to control. This is the genius of the Archonic Matrix. It makes the cage invisible, and even convinces you that it's your home. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of the Matrix is the illusion of choice. You're told you're free to choose, but only between pre-selected options. Left or right. Science or religion. Work or poverty. None of these paths lead to sovereignty, because all are still within the cage. Gnosticism called this the world of appearances, a place ruled by rulers who offer freedom only in form, never in essence. And yet, there are cracks in the matrix. Moments of déjà vu, intuition, synchronicity, or spontaneous insight. These are not glitches, but reminders from your true self that there is more. When you meditate, fast, or break patterns of consumption, the veil begins to thin. You catch glimpses of the pleroma, the realm beyond this synthetic reality. You begin to ask the forbidden questions. Who am I, really? What is this place? Who benefits from my ignorance? The Archons have invested millennia into building this system, but they rely on one critical factor: your belief in it. The Matrix is not sustained by their power, it's sustained by your agreement. Every time you obey out of fear, conform without questioning, or distract yourself from your soul's whisper, you reinforce the walls. But every time you remember, question, and awaken, those same walls begin to crack. This is how the system of control unravels. Not through rebellion, but through remembrance. The Matrix is not the final reality. It's a test, a challenge, a labyrinth designed to wake you up. And once you see it for what it is, you are no longer just a player in their game. You become a sovereign being, one who sees through illusion and walks freely beyond the bounds of false creation. Once you realize the Matrix is not the ultimate reality, and the Archons are not divine but distortions, what then? Awareness alone is not enough to break free from Archonic influence. One must actively reclaim their sovereignty. The Gnostics didn't just identify the prison, they offered keys to unlock it. These were not rituals or doctrines, but inner technologies of awakening, timeless strategies for spiritual liberation that remain just as relevant today. The core of Gnostic liberation lies in gnosis, not belief, but direct experiential knowledge of the divine. Gnosis doesn't come from external texts or teachers, it comes from within, through deep inner silence, contemplation, and the stripping away of illusion. The Archons operate in the realm of thought, Gnosis begins in the stillness beyond thought. This is why meditation, or what the Gnostics might call inner listening, is a powerful act of rebellion. In the stillness of the present moment, free from mental noise, you begin to see what is real and what is programmed. You begin to hear your own soul again, unfiltered, unmediated. Another essential strategy is discernment. The ability to distinguish your true inner guidance from archonic interference. Not every thought, feeling, or vision is yours. Ask yourself, does this thought lead to fear, shame, or paralysis? Or does it lead to expansion, clarity, and peace? The Archons speak in urgency and anxiety. The divine speaks in quiet knowing. Developing this subtle awareness is how you reclaim your mental sovereignty and stop being a puppet of unseen forces. The Gnostics also emphasized emotional mastery. Archons feed on emotional volatility: fear, rage, envy, despair. By cultivating inner balance, you deny them sustenance. This isn't about suppression, but about awareness without identification. Feel your emotions fully, but don't let them define you. Practice observing them like clouds passing through the sky. This emotional detachment weakens the archonic grip and strengthens your inner clarity. Knowledge without action, however, is still illusion. Liberation requires courage. Courage to walk away from inherited systems, to question long-held assumptions, and to live in alignment with truth. Even when it's inconvenient, it may mean saying no to toxic relationships, leaving institutions that drain your spirit, or confronting the false narratives you've accepted about yourself. The path is not easy, but every act of truth is a rupture in the matrix. Every choice rooted in awareness weakens the web. Gnostics also understood the importance of community, but not in the traditional sense. They gathered not to worship a god, but to remind each other of who they truly were. In today's world, connecting with like-minded souls, people who value awareness, authenticity, and inner work, can accelerate your liberation. Not because they save you, but because they mirror your awakening and help you stay grounded in your truth. Finally, remember, liberation is not a destination. It's a process, a discipline, a way of being. The Archons will not vanish overnight. Their influence may still whisper in your mind. But the more you choose presence over programming, clarity over confusion, sovereignty over submission, the more you become immune to their control. You are not a passive subject in their cosmic scheme. You are a spark of divine intelligence, a being of light navigating through shadow. And when you remember that, truly remember it, the system begins to crumble from the inside out. For centuries, the Gnostic teachings were buried, declared heresy, burned from libraries, driven underground by empires, institutions, and religions that feared their power. And yet, like a seed lying dormant beneath the soil, Gnosis never truly died. It waited silently until the time was right. And now, in our modern age of crisis and awakening, it is returning. But why now? Why is the ancient knowledge of the Archons, the Matrix, and spiritual sovereignty rising again from the ashes of forgotten history? Because humanity is reaching a tipping point. The old systems are cracking. The illusions that once held the world together, governments, religions, economies, media narratives, are collapsing under the weight of their own falseness. People are beginning to question everything: their purpose, their identity, their reality. And in that questioning, something ancient stirs. It is the soul's memory of a truth long buried. The Gnostics said that the divine spark within us cannot be extinguished. It only sleeps. And now, as the shadows grow louder, more and more people are waking up. We are living in an age where information is no longer controlled by the few. The discoveries at Nag Hammadi, once locked away in academic circles, are now accessible with a click. People who have never read a Gnostic gospel can still intuitively sense the same truths. That there is something false in this world, something off. That there is more to life than survival, achievement, and distraction. This collective intuition is not coincidence. It is resonance. Gnosis is returning not as dogma, but as a frequency, a vibration that calls to those who are ready to remember. And it's not just spiritual seekers feeling this pull. Scientists are exploring consciousness in ways that echo mystical teachings. Quantum physicists are questioning the nature of reality itself. Psychologists are seeing the power of inner awareness over external control. Artists, dreamers, rebels, and healers across the world are stepping into new roles, not as leaders of belief systems, but as bridges between the seen and unseen. The veil is thinning, and as the veil thins, the Archons grow desperate. Their system cannot survive in a world where people think for themselves, feel deeply, and choose presence over programming. But the return of Gnosis is not automatic. It's an invitation, not a guarantee. Each of us must choose whether to awaken or remain sedated, whether to face the uncomfortable truths of our inner and outer worlds, or to keep clinging to the comfort of illusion. The Archons do not fear war or protest. They fear the quiet moment when a human being turns inward and remembers who they are. Because in that moment, the entire system begins to lose its grip. This is why this knowledge is resurfacing now. Because the world is ready. Because you are ready. Gnosis isn't returning to save humanity. It's returning so that humanity can save itself, not through force or ideology, but through remembrance. The remembrance that you are not broken, not fallen, not separate. You are a spark of the infinite, temporarily wandering through a dream. And once you realize that, the dream can be transformed. So now the choice is yours. You've glimpsed the architecture of the illusion, the Archons, the matrix, the layers of control that have shaped your mind, your world, and even your sense of self. But this isn't just a story to entertain your intellect. It's a mirror, a moment of recognition. Because deep down, you've always known this world isn't quite right, that your soul didn't come here just to obey, to consume, to forget. You came here to wake up. The Archons can only rule with your permission. The Matrix only holds you if you stop questioning it. And illusion only survives when you forget your true nature. But within you there is something untouched, unbroken, eternal. A spark of the divine that existed before this world, and will exist long after it. That spark cannot be taken. It can only be forgotten or remembered. The world around you will continue to pull at your attention, tempt you with comfort, distract you with noise. But every breath, every moment of stillness is a doorway back to Gnosis, back to sovereignty, back to truth. You don't need to escape this world. You need to see it clearly. Because once you remember who you truly are, the game changes. You're no longer a pawn. You become the player. You become the light the darkness cannot touch. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Not the return of a savior from above, but the rise of awareness from within. You are not here by accident. You are not powerless. You are not alone. The final choice is not out there. It is in you.